What's up, everyone? Welcome to the new episode of the Myles High Podcast. This is Myles Monroe Jr., your host. And as always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. I have a special guest on the pod today. This is someone who I've known for quite a number of years, right? Someone who I'm now working along with, but someone who I've always been amazed at, right? Her story is impactful. I think it's something that's encouraging, and I wanted to bring her on to tell that specific story. So I want to welcome to the pod, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. April Elizabeth Finlayson. Let's give her a clap up, guys.
Hello all. It's a pleasure to be here.
April, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. So we've had many conversations about the topic of education, the importance of it, and different aspects of education. You're an educator by profession, and it's something that you've been doing for quite a number of years. There are things that you've been able to do that just simply amazes me. I'm super impressed with what you've done. We've known each other since high school, and just to see how you've been able to flourish in this space, I think it's commendable. So first, I want to congratulate you for all that you've done and been able to do. I'm just looking forward to the things that you're gonna do in the future, especially because we're working together. So that's a little bias that I'm putting in there.
A little shameless plug.
But we'll get to that later on in the episode. But to start, so I want you to give a little bit of history about your personal education and like where this educational seed was birthed in you.
So I'm Dr. April Elizabeth Finlayson, born and raised here in the Bahamas, but I'm bicultural. So my dad is from Andros, which is the Bigfoot-looking island in the Bahamas, and my mom is from Georgia and was raised in Florida. And so I bring my parents into the conversation when you talk about like the seed, because now when I look back over my life, I understand that things were kind of in motion long before I was even here. And so they are definitely a key part of my educational journey. So I say that because I think there are two sides of like potential, right? So you have inherited potential and then you have like your individual potential. And so from the perspective of inherited potential, the first job that both of my parents held were as educators.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So my dad was in the context of, back in the day in Andros, you finish probably at like the 9th grade level. If you was the smartest in the class, then you go on to like help the teacher. So that's what he did for a few years. And then with my mom was actually recruited to the Bahamas as an educator when the Bahamas got independence. Okay. And fun fact, she worked at C.H. Reeves alongside your daddy. There we go. Big picture
circle,
moment, right? So I say that, growing up, I had no idea that I would go into education in spite of the fact that was both of my parents' first careers. But it definitely was a very important part of the puzzle. So education journey, April, cue this. I absolutely hated school. Okay, like hated with a passion. Anyone who knows me from elementary school knew that April hated school, but I always loved learning. And so my journey through school locally was actually challenging, so to speak, because I did not like to go to school. I felt like school was taken away from my real life. I was very entrepreneurial from really young, and so I felt like I could be doing my business, I could be reading my books, I could be doing all sorts of things, but here you have me in school for all these hours, and then after I leave school, I have homework. Say what? So
you said you were entrepreneurial from young. Like,
yes.
Give me some of those things you did.
Oh, sure.
From an entrepreneur standpoint.
So one of the businesses that my brother and I had together was, we had a lot of fruit trees in our yard, and so we would sell fruits. So we sold like sea grapes, sugar bananas, all that kind of stuff.
And sell them where? In the neighborhood?
Sell them in school, even though we weren't supposed to be doing that in school. But then that was just the business that we were using to feed our larger business. So my brother was really good with his hands, and so we would buy Nintendo parts that were broken from people, and then he would refurbish them. And so we got our money from our like fruit business to refurbish the parts, and then we would sell the parts back to people during like holiday breaks. So the big times when people were going to want it, that would be like Easter and Christmas. when, you know, children are home from school and young people are going to be buying that type of stuff. So that was our first business together.
And how old were you, around what age?
I was probably like 6.
Wow.
And my brother was like 16. My mom actually, when she noticed that our like nature for entrepreneurship, she actually started an incorporated company for us.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so we were doing big things early, you know. And then our other business, now this one, this is a little shameful. We then decided when we made all of that capital that we wanted to build a submarine. You know,
at 6?
You know, needless to say, that didn't work out. But a lot of our money was invested in the submarine. All your businesses don't work, so we had to learn that. We had to learn that one early.
Your parents allowed that investment to happen?
That's the thing. I'm so impressed by the fact that my mom would actually like, wow. We would give her our supply list and be like, I need you to go to the store to pick up these things. And she just said, have you all thought about the mechanics behind it? And would ask us like pressing questions, but she never said like, no, that is not going to work.
Yeah,
like, what y'all doing? Y'all building a submarine out of wood? No. Like, she never did that. So, you know, she kind of fostered that entrepreneurial spirit.
That's dope.
And so, you know, I have that type of stuff going on in my life. You think I wanted to be in school? I did not. And so we actually came up with another solution. And all of this kind of like shapes the way that I feel like my school was started and like what went into my school, because then I negotiated with my mom. I was like, I do not like going to school. Is there something I could do? So my family business, those people who know me from the early part of my career as well as the early part of my life know me as April Elizabeth Sawyer. Yep. And so, you know, my family business was Sawyer Studio. If you don't have a Sawyer Studio picture in your house, are you even Bahamian? I mean. And so we made a deal that I would work at the studio through the week. I had to go to school if there were any tests. I had to do well on the test. The moment that I'm not doing well on the test anymore, then I'm no longer to have this. I'm not able to do this anymore. And so I would be allowed to I had to finish a book a week, work in the studio, and do well on my test. And we did that for most of the 5th and the 6th grade. So essentially, it was almost like I was homeschooled. Right. I went to school, took my test, moved on to the next grade, but it wasn't school that I was getting the bulk of what I would say like my education or the experience of learning from.
What school was this?
I was a QC.
Okay. Why you say it like that?
Because just in case we were going to talk about some other challenging parts of my journey, we were going to like keep the name private. Yeah. But, you know, we'll hide some other things.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so from there, like having like a challenging relationship with education and school in general, I feel like I was always searching for something. And so around the 11th grade, it was the end of the 10th grade actually, one of my friends had gone to boarding school and she came back, and she wasn't the type of person who was really into like current events and world issues and that type of thing. And when she came back, she was so well versed on like current events and what was going on in multiple parts of the world. And I was like, hold on, like I know you ain't researched that yourself. Like no disrespect, but I just knew that that's not what happened. And so I asked her about it, and she told me that she had classes in school where, you know, they did like reenactments of different parts of history and also current events, and she didn't have to join Model UN to have this experience. This is something she was having every day in the general classroom. And so when I found out about that, I was like, hold on now, someone getting something I'm not getting. I love to learn. Hated school, like I said, but I absolutely love to learn. And so that's when I got the idea to go to boarding school. I looked into the school that she was attending, and I actually decided to go there. And so for the 11th grade, I went to boarding school in rural Ontario, like 2 hours outside of Toronto, Lakefield College School. And I think that experience really opened me up to like what learning can look like in a way that it's like truly holistic, when learning is done in like a space where it feels like family. You know,
and that's how that school
that's exactly
their education.
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much. The environment was like very family, even down to like our dorms. Like in most boarding schools, dorms would, you know, look like a dorm, but for us it was like a house, and there's a family that lives in the house. So behind like any other door, one of those doors you open goes into someone's house. It looks like our doors, but it opens into a full house with a full family. And so you have that sense of community, and that sense of community was in every part of the learning experience. And I found it was like at that stage that I got a lot more committed to education and learning. Because anybody who know me, I wasn't no like front of the classroom, super studious Miss April. Like I was into learning, but the way that school was structured just truly was not for me.
Sure. So after boarding school, like what did, like, obviously you went to college, like how did you make the decision to go to college? Let's talk about that.
So, okay, I need to preference most of my journey with the fact that I can't take credit for my journey, right? I look at it now and I think about the tapestry of God's grace over my life, right? And the thing about a tapestry, and like Reese could chime in about this, like when you first start with a tapestry, it could look very disparate. There's like the patterns might look odd, the colors might look like they all out of the way. And for much of my journey, that's what it was like. And I'm finally at a place now where I could step back and see the tapestry and see how intentional God was about my journey. Because when it came to college, let me throw this in again, I was also just not Miss Super. I was about college, like very early. I had my Spelman t-shirt from Myles High. So I told everybody, like at my primary school graduation, I was like, look, I could skip all this school part. I won't go to Spelman. But no, in terms of like doing it in the way that, like, I don't know, super committed nerds might do it. That was not me. And I just had my idea. My heart set on Spelman. I felt like that was it. My mom did not want me in the US because this was like shortly after 9/11. And so she was like, no, not happening. And so I went to McGill University, and that actually happened because of our mutual friend. So I did not do my own application for McGill University. As a matter of fact, I was standing on a line outside of a local nightclub. And I remembered that there was a deadline for college applications outside of the province. So in Canada, they have provinces instead of states. And everyone had to apply to a school out of province. And then I was standing on the line and I look at the date on my phone and I was like, oh my goodness. And this is a testament of having friends that actually know you and could be there for you. And so I called Tracy and I was like, Tracy, I ain't gonna graduate if you don't do this application. Like, pick one school for me. And so she was like, you know, University of British Columbia or McGill? I was like, one of them. Like, just pick it, fill out the application. She was like, what program? I was like, girl, you know me. You could just fill out the application. That's literally what happened. She filled out the entire application, all my biographical data, my parents, the program that I was applying to, which was perfectly suited for me. And so that is actually how I chose my university. And then when my dad found out, so when I wasn't going to Spelman anymore, I was just like, I want time away from school to build houses in South America and learn the language. And my dad was like, girl, you got into McGill, you go into McGill. Like he put his foot down and was just like, no. I couldn't believe it because I'm so used to him being on my side and my mommy being the one to be like, no, this is what you're doing. I'm so used to my mom being the one to like lay down the law and my dad being the one to say, oh, think about what she said. And in that instance, he was like, no, you got into McGill, you go into McGill. And so I went to McGill, which was definitely probably one of the best moves for me as far as my academic career is concerned.
Okay, so you graduated from McGill. Enjoyed your time there?
I did.
Beautiful
city. Yeah. No, I absolutely enjoyed my time there, for real.
Okay, and so after McGill, what was next?
So after McGill, this is where it gets good. Technically, you know, traditional island person child, I was supposed to be going to law school. Straight and plain, okay? So my dad was so invested in me going to law school that my last couple of months at McGill, I actually did my classes at FIU online. And he was very clear, it was like a smooth transition. When you finish those classes, then you go into studying for your LSAT. So my dad actually had paid for apartment away from home for me to be studying for this LSAT because this is how invested he was for me to go to law school. And that is exactly what I was doing immediately after McGill. But then I had to come home to do some type of business with my mom. And when I came home for business, I started attending the church that she attended. And that church went on a corporate fast. And so I came home. I was only supposed to be here for like maybe 2 weeks. I kept extending it because I really was enjoying the church, right? So I was like, okay, I'll go next month. Oh, I'll go next month. And I ended up being here for like 3 months. At that point, I had already started volunteering in like the youth ministry. I was working in like community organizing because the church was on Windsor Lane. So it's like the inner city part of Nassau. So I was doing a lot of that type of hands-on work and falling in love with that type of work, to be quite honest. And the church went on a corporate fast. And when the church went on a corporate fast, and this is me, I just want to give you all the context for the fact that like, this is me now taking my own faith in my hands, right? You know, like as a young adult, I'm like 22 going on 23. And like, and now this is a me thing, right? This isn't just me showing up to do it because that's what you do on Sundays. And during the fast, I felt the leading of God, and God said to me, you and your mom should start a school together. And then there was a very clear vision. I wrote like pages and pages of information about like what this school would be like and like what other types of education opportunities I'll get into. Like just, it was very detailed. Now, you would think I would walk away from an experience like that and be like so sure. It's like, obviously you're an educated April. No. Honestly, I was obedient because I fear the Lord. That's it. Like, no other reason. I was just obedient because I was scared. So I was like, you know what? Let me go to my mommy and just tell her what I felt God led me to say. And then after, she's going to say, girl, you crazy. You going back. You can go to law school and go on with your life. So I went to her and I told her, and she paused and she looked at me and she was like.
She confirmed that. She
was like, I heard the same thing.
Yep.
And I was like, oh. And so then she's like, so what did God show you? Like, and then it was all like back on me. And I was like, well, okay. And I started telling her like what God showed me. And we stepped out on faith and started the Leadership Academy on my mother's dining room table.
Wow. What year was this?
This is in 2009.
And you were 22 years old?
I was 23 at
23
this point
years
when we
old.
finally started, yeah.
Wow. So, and you know, hearing that, first time I heard that part of your story, I was intrigued, right? Because in the Bahamas, like you don't really hear about these new schools that do things differently, right? Or that educate kids differently or provide a different environment for kids. But like during that time, there were a number of schools that popped up. I don't want to call it any names, but I knew that there were a number of schools that popped up that were educating kids differently. So, and I hadn't heard about your school until maybe, honestly, a couple of years ago, right? But you guys have been in business for quite some time, you know, before that. So, you know, starting this, and the school is called the Leadership Academy.
The Leadership Academy. Yes.
It's a phenomenal school, right? The kids that come out of this school are literally kids that are changing the way things are done, not only in the Bahamas, but in different parts of the world as well. And like, I'm always impressed about the caliber of kids that you have that come from this school, and not just like what they do, but who they are and who they know that they are, right? Because when I graduated high school, I wasn't sure of who I was, right? I wasn't confident in the things that I wanted to do, or even sure of what it was that I wanted to do. I knew I had a specialty and wanted to have a focus in business, but really didn't have a clear path or a clear plan on how I wanted to do that. But your kids, at least the ones that I've come in contact with, like, it's just impressive of the confidence that they have and the surety of the plans that, you know, they want to create for themselves. So in starting this school, I'm sure, like, let's briefly walk through that process. I'm sure that had to been maybe not a hard process, but a tedious process, right? Because you want to start a school, so you have to be approved or whatever by some local form of government. I'm sure that was a lot of red tape to walk through, but you guys got it done.
We got it done. Weapons of form, but they shall not prosper.
Always. So let's talk about the beginning of the school, like starting the school, the setbacks that you guys may have had, and then, you know, that period where you guys, you know, were able to push through and start the school. Yeah.
So one of the things straight up, my mom said to me, April, if I'm doing this with you, we are not doing the things that were done to you when you were in school. So, you know, this whole notion of focusing on what color socks children wearing and what their shoe look like and this the type of backpack you're supposed to have, she was like, that's a no. If you even think about doing anything like that, I am not doing this with you. So I think her naming that very early set a standard in terms of what the character of the school was going to be like. And so, of course, by nature of us wanting to do something different, and at the core of our school being that is a school of faith, like, we truly promote beyond anything else. When my students walk out of the door, my goal is that they know how to have answered prayer. And you have answered prayer by knowing the word of God. When you speak in God's language back to God, God is going to answer some prayers for you. And so I think just by doing that and doing something so different, you are going to bring a fight. And so a fight it was. on so many different levels and planes. We had a fight at the national level. I mean, like, laws were put in place in this country because of the existence of my little school. And at this point, our school was only like, I would say about 30 kids when we had the challenges where, you know, police came with guns and all sorts of things on campus one day. But like, God is always able, because two things happened and we were prepared in that instance. So my pastor at the time was very prophetic and had said he had a vision of my mom being arrested. And we were like, what? Like, we all laughed because we was like, what? This old lady arrested for what? You know what I mean?
What law is she breaking?
Like, what's she doing? and then I had been praying one day, and I was led to put on the calendar in the middle of the school that everybody passed that this particular day out of the week was supposed to be a revival. And so we were all in what we call morning devotions for a longer period of time. That very same day. So the night before is when we got another prophecy that, you know, I see this happening soon. The very next morning, which happened to be the same day that I put on the calendar as revival, was the day that police officers stormed the house. You know, me and my citizenship was what they used, but technically it was just like a lot of people. It was very political. It was a political season, and a lot of people in power felt like using the school and me would be a way to kind of get things to go their way. But like I say, weapons formed and they don't prosper. But what that did for us is we went from that year, a school of only like 30 children. You're like, you have not heard of our school before, because we intentionally did not advertise and promote the school. We always wanted the school to bring its own strengths, right? Like, people come to the school because their children are served well, and they then pass it on by word of mouth. And so that year, once we went in the news, people were like, why people care about this school with 30 people and this old woman? Like, what? There has to be something to it. This school must be special. And our school went from an enrollment of somewhere around 30 to 110.
Wow.
And
so they tried to shut you guys down, but gave you guys free marketing and
promotion. It was incredible. And it was truly a testament to, you know, like, just persevering. It was not easy. I would say if I wasn't doing it with my mom, there was so many times that I would have quit. Sure. Because, you know, as a young person, I was like, see, that's too much. Like, we just trying to do something good. You know, why are we going through all of this?
And there's so much principles in that, right? Because number one, it like, who you do it with matters, right? And like, the partners we choose in life, the partners we choose in business is like super important. And then the second thing is like, we're always going to face these obstacles, right? Things are going to come up. Things are going to try to take us out. But, you know, these things can be used for our betterment, right? Everything, no matter what happens in life, everything can be used for the good of God and for his glory to be brought forth. So that's an amazing story, man. And, you know, just like you say, they tried to, you know, make up some stuff to get you guys, I guess, shut down or, you know, propel themselves in this political season. But it only boosted your registration and applications for your school. So that's amazing. Now let's talk about the school itself, right? Because you guys you do education a bit differently from you know, the regular high schools in the Bahamas, and I'm assuming, you know, other schools around the world. So what's the focus in the way that you educate kids, and how, like, at the end of their educational season, I'm talking like when they graduate, what is it that you want your kids to walk away with?
Okay. So first, in terms of how we do things different to the core, the focus is the child, right? In many conventional school environments, especially locally, it's about so many other things in the child. It's like the family, what family the child come from, all that type of stuff. But for us, it's about the individual that's in front of us, and how can we allow this individual to grow in a way that they truly know themselves. I think if there's anything that's consistent about my graduates, it's about the fact that they've taken that time to really like get to know who they are, and from there they're able to figure out like what see their potential and figure out what the purpose is for their life, right? And so the way that we do that different is every family has an interview, and the interview isn't like a, you know, like most schools have like an entrance test. That's not the thought. The idea of the family interview is that we meet the child and the family, and we see if this is someone we could really partner with to go on what is a very unconventional journey about your child learning themselves. Because if your child is learning yourselves, there are some days in our school you might come to school and you may be having a really off day, and you may not do schoolwork. and we're actually going to support you in that journey. We actually may take you on errands or something like that, so that someone within the environment has an opportunity to really talk to you and see what's going on. And that, some people don't want that under any circumstance. I drop my child to school, I want my child to go to school. Whereas with us, it's more about like, who is this person and their character development. So that's the first part. Then from like an academic perspective, what we do is we design a plan towards graduation for each individual child. And so if you have, let's say you had a twin brother, you all wouldn't necessarily be doing the same style of math, or your English might not be at the same level, or you just simply don't have the same interest, so you would have very different electives. And so we put together a plan based on the actual individual child, right? And then what is most important to me, is I kind of foreshadowed earlier, is you have an opportunity to have a life. So you have homework if you don't finish what you were supposed to do in school, but it's not us assigning you homework, because I feel like you need to have a life. Like that is how you are successful. You have to get to know like who you are and what you're interested in. A lot of people lose so much time on the college end because they never had an opportunity to have that type of exploration. And so we want to allow our students the space to be able to like do other things professionally. A lot of my students, before they graduate, they're already within some career. Like I've had like philanthropists start early with like cookies on Wednesdays and sending cookies into using the profits from the cookies to be able to help a local primary school, like different things like that, right? Or like literally, a lot of entertainers and athletes and that type of thing graduate from our school. Most of like people often will say, oh, I didn't realize you out of school or know your school, but they often know our graduates, right?
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what we're leaning towards. But the only way we could do that is by focusing on like character development, faith development, like individual growth and development.
No, I love that. And I love the way that you guys teach in the school, right? Because I like growing up, in the, I guess we would call the traditional high schools, or schools in the Bahamas, period. Like there's a set curriculum that every student goes through. Everyone learns the same way. But each of us are different as individuals, right? And I could recall, once I graduated, moved on in life, and then thinking back to school, and you would remember like those individuals who were considered like smart, or the smarter ones in school, graduated, and they aren't like, you have that most likely to be successful or whatever. Like those individuals didn't, their trajectory didn't pan out to be what we thought it would be. And that's nothing against, the kids, or nothing against anything. Like life happens, right? And a lot of things that we go through kind of deviate us from, maybe the ultimate plan that we're supposed to be accomplishing. But my point is, like, I don't think every kid should be educated the same. No. And I like the way the Leadership Academy educates, and the intention that you guys have, or the details that you guys pay attention to when it comes to like educating individual kids, and like what this kid needs versus what this kid needs.
Right.
So I just think that's something that was unique. I was impressed when I learned that that's what the Leadership Academy was about. And like you say, a lot of people don't know about your school, or may not know about your school, but they do know a lot about you guys as graduates.
Right.
Because your kids become staples in our communities, especially in the Bahamas. So that's super impressive. Okay, so that's the Leadership Academy. Now, you're also a Harvard graduate.
I am.
Right?
Two-time Harvard graduate.
Toot your own horn. All right, April. Dr. Finlayson, got you. But how, like, okay, so you graduate from your undergrad, you started an entire school.
Indeed.
And then decided to go to Harvard. Like, how? Like, what? Why?
Funny thing. So that same time, that same period when I saw the vision for the school, I was thinking like, oh, God had me opening a whole school. All I got is a bachelor's. Like, these people about to bring their children to me, and they did, which is, I'm blown away by the fact that actually happened. Because I was like, you could imagine taking your children out of prominent high schools here in the Bahamas and entrusting your child to a 23-year-old. Yeah. Like, whew. But anyhow, so that same, like later that evening, I actually started researching schools that had a 1-year master's program. So I want to give you context. This is in 2009. And I saw very clearly in my mind, it was like the Spirit of the Lord was like, look up neuroscience, psychology, and education, because I knew the type of students that I was called to serve, in terms of like, I wanted to be able to serve a broad spectrum of difference. And so I looked up neuroscience, psychology, and education, and the only school that had a program was Harvard. Wow. And I was like, is this a joke? Like, clearly this is a joke. And I was just like, you know what? Anyway, I just kind of like pushed it away. I actually, months later, it came up to my mind again, and I looked in to see when like the application process was, and I missed. And like I said, this is like, we just started my school. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of put that on the back burner. And then some 5 years ago, because of challenge again, definitely because of difficulty, setback, I was going through issues again locally with my citizenship. I had just like my work permit or something like took forever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm a teacher. Like, why my work permit taking forever? You know, that's something that's easy for most people. And I got very frustrated, and literally in a fit of frustration, I applied to the master's program. I was like, exactly. I was like, you know what? I put in a lot of my eggs in one basket. Yeah. And so I just needed to do something. And so I applied to the master's program and got into the mind-brain and education program, as I had looked at many years before. And then during that program, I was exposed to the doctorate of education leadership, and fell in love with the concept of the program, because the program, it was so much of, I feel like, what I had been looking for throughout my entire academic journey. So it's a doctorate in education leadership, and it could be misgiving if you're not thinking about like the purpose that education actually serves in society, and what it takes to actually be a good leader. And so within the context of this very beautiful program, which is it's actually a partnership between, and this gives you a better understanding of what they teach. It's like a partnership between Harvard Business School, Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And so they teach you, let me just put it like this. The motto of the program is transform sector. And so this notion of like getting to know yourself better and transforming yourself will allow for you to impact the world and transform the education sector. And they absolutely deliver as far as the curriculum is concerned to do that. And so, yeah, I went
to Harvard, graduated.
Yes.
You're a Harvard two-time Harvard graduate.
Indeed.
Super impressive.
Thanks.
And doing all of this while still, you know, maintaining your leadership academy. Your mom was a big help to you.
Huge.
One of the things too that I like about your school is, in talking about the help that you get, a lot of the kids that graduate from your school come back and work for the school.
Yes.
You know, that's super impressive, right? You're training, you're educating your educators essentially, right? And you're promoting from within. I think that's a good, an added bonus to what the Leadership Academy could do. Not only are they providing for society, but they're paying it forward for the Leadership Academy as well, and the kids coming up after them. So super impressive, April. So what's next? You know, you and I have started working together in this educational space. You know, our organizations have been trying to get an institute off the ground, right? We have a lot of resources within our organization that we, you know, have been trying to use to create curriculum, create training programs that we want to offer for persons to learn. And I think this is just my opinion. I think the problem was like we didn't find the right people to work with. And I think, you know, everything happens in time. I think the work that was done prior to now was necessary, right? It got us to this point. But you and I connected early 2023. And not that, you know, it's always amazing to me. Like, I've known April my entire life. Well, pretty much my stuff. Her parents and my parents knew each other. And now, you know, coming full circle, you and I are working together now. So what's next for you? You know, we are working together on the Monroe Institute of Leadership. But I'm sure you have a lot more plans that you want to accomplish. You actually, Harvard employs you as well. You do some work with Harvard. So you're doing a whole lot. So let's just talk about like what's next for April.
So I'm the executive director of the Monroe Institute of Leadership.
That she is. Let's give her a clap up for that, guys. Way to go, April.
And so essentially, I guess the way that I look at it now, because many of the plans of a man's heart, but it's God's purpose that prevails.
100%.
And I can be an over planner, and oftentimes in being an over planner, that's when God is just like, miss, we on a plan here, slow your roll. Actually, that's how we connected again, because I was supposed to be going to residency, and I had gotten, you know, all into myself and how I had things planned. And I was like, I'm going to go residency in Atlanta, and I'm going to do this and that. And then all sorts of things started happening in my life to slow me down. And then I ended up working for an organization that ended up reaching out to you for assistance. And then we ended up connecting that way. And I remember how crazy that is, because right before I was when I first saw them, when they first came to me, I was so determined that I was not going to work with them. It was like God was speaking to me and was like, April, this is what you're supposed to do. And I was like, I'm going to, in my mind, I was like, oh no, I'm not. Yeah. And then I remember going back to Boston, and literally one day in CVS, it was like the Holy Spirit was very clear with me, like, you are going to work. That organization was like, ain't like they had been texting me, nothing. It was just out of clear nowhere, like, you are going to work with that organization. So I like literally put down my shopping cart, pick up the phone, and was like, I'll work with y'all. And when I think about how it came together, because that then connected us for the work that we're doing, is so like big picture and full circle, especially considering, like I told you before, a year into opening the school, I'd heard your dad talk about his vision for the institute, and when I heard it, I literally looked at my mom and I said, he was like, he's had this vision with him for so long, and it's just a matter of him finding the people to do the work. Not that the vision isn't complete, it's just having the right people. And I looked square at my mom and I was like, Mommy, I'm the people. But that was crazy, because here it is, I was like fresh out of undergrad, like what I talking about? And she was like, just write it down, you know what you do, write it down, and it'll probably come back. And so sad, so done, right? And so I preface all of that to say is like, back to this tapestry, I am really in no position to actually name specifically what's my next detailed plans are, but I will say what I am going to continue to do, right? And so my goal is to really continue to scale what I'm doing, period. And that's like enlightening people in terms of like their journey and igniting their potential. And when I think about that from the perspective of like my students within the Leadership Academy, you kind of like segued us into that. Many of my students also want to have their own schools, right? And so when I think about how our scaling is going to look, it's not like me opening up a ton of different leadership academies. It's having my incredible students who know it better than anyone else, who've experienced it, because at the end of the day, I didn't experience Leadership Academy, right? And having them to create their own schools and seeing that happen. And then now the opportunity that I have with you, with working in the tertiary space and kind of replicating that experience of people being able to discover themselves, deepen their faith, and really leading into their purpose, and orchestrating. It's like finding their own power, right? Like in a lot of spaces, power is a dirty word, and that's what people think of it, but you can't have the word potential without power. And so when people have that opportunity to activate that power, I feel like that's my goal. It's like enlightening people with like information and knowledge about self, and about self-development, so that they could ignite their power and light that candle in other people.
Wow, that's man. That's dope. No, that's dope. I love it, you know. And again, education is so important, but I do believe that we all learn differently, and I think in order for us to be successful and be the best that we can in our areas of gifting, we have to tap into the specific strengths of learning that we have, and that's what I want to create with the Munner Institute of Leadership. And you know, going back to that story of how we got connected, like the connection to you at this point had nothing to do with education, right? I was introduced to a gentleman that was in sports and athletics, and our conversation was about that. And he was like, "Oh, you know, I have this program that we do in one of the high schools here that we're trying to duplicate in other high schools. So come in and, you know, just sit in on one of our classes. You know, you were lead for that program." So, you know, sat in the class, was just impressed to, you know, how the kids were learning and how they were progressing through this program. That got you and I talking, and boom, there we are. Exactly. You know, it's just crazy how things work out, man. And there are things that we're going to face in life, things that are unexpected, things that are of our own doing, but everything could be used to our good or to His good.
Exactly.
And I think if we focus on the principle behind that verse, right? In all that we do, regardless of how, bad the situation is or bad our circumstances are, just looking for the good in everything, or being able to connect the dots. You and I were having a conversation the other day about being so many years removed from, this journey that you've been through. Like, now you're able to connect the dots of like why things happened and how they happened. And I think that's how life plays out. So this was great, April. I wish you the best in everything that you do.
Same to you.
I think my wife has a question she wants to ask.
April, so I have two questions for you. So one, how can we begin to change the colonial mindset of education in the Bahamas? We know that a lot of kids in the system today are forced to do certain stuff, to be certain ways, and it's stifling their creativity, their confidence. How can we begin to focus on children's individual needs as opposed to just lumping everyone into one group and forcing, everyone to learn the same way when we are all different and unique?
So there are two things that come to mind that are readily accessible, right? So the first thing is, if we had the opportunity to have more after school programs, like people investing in after school programs that show people how effective this untraditional style of learning can be, then I think more people will buy into it, right? Because I can remember, like, pre-pandemic, what I was doing seemed so novel. Like, people were like, well, why do you need to personalize or individualize or have, like, computer-based learning and all these different things? And then the pandemic happened and everybody realized, like, oh, this makes sense. And are more willing to lean into it. And I think that if we invest in spaces where we have after school programs so that parents can actually become believers of the fact that this can work, that's one way. Another way is, my country, our people. We are so against vocational education, and there's so much that's lost from us being against vocational education. And junior colleges, this whole notion of that type of space, if we would embrace those types of opportunities more, like, imagine if we had a school system that was intentional about making sure that you have a certain amount of experiential hours. And those experiential hours could be like vocational learning, carpentry, go into BTVI, but those experiential learning experiences could also be you being an apprentice or an intern at a particular place, and you have to have a certain amount of those hours to graduate. Then you would start to see, like, people having the opportunity to, like, they will learn more about themselves and having those, like, real life experiences, right? So I think those are two, like, standard ways. But then, I just want to be myself and be revolutionary and be like, just give it a chance. You know what I mean? Like, just step outside of the box and, like, take that leap of faith and invest in your child. And when I say invest, I don't mean, like, financial resources. I mean, invest that time into your child, like, knowing who your child is as an individual and seeing at least two things that they're really interested in through.
You have two questions?
Yeah, my second question has more to do with educators. I know a lot of teachers are burnt out, they're underpaid, they're not loved. How can the public, be better, I guess, partners to our teachers? Or do you think why do you think we have such a disdain for teachers and the support just isn't there?
I don't know if it's a disdain.
No, it is.
I think it's an unappreciation.
Well, I mean, I think it.
Disdain seemed like a strong word.
When you're not paying teachers, when you're not appreciating them, when you expect them to parent your child, I feel like you don't love these people.
When you're in it, you actually feel very unloved sometimes. I'll be honest. And it's almost like, what I don't like, especially within the private school sector, I feel like sometimes it's even worse because people like, I'm paying you, so you could do what I say type of response. And it's almost like shut up and work sometimes. And when you have an environment like ours, especially when we stepping out and, like, really trying to invest in your child as an individual, it does feel that way sometimes, for real, Sharice, where it's like, it's almost like a level of hate. And I don't know if it's because it's like that in my instance, I can only speak from my experience if it's the financial exchange or not.
Exactly. It seems like this is transactional, because even during the pandemic, when people went on Zoom, and it's like, well, why do I have to pay 100% of tuition when y'all just teaching my kids on Zoom? Like, that's the type of attitude people have, as if shut up and teach it, or you don't deserve this amount of money.
But at the same time, they're also very incredible parents that are very supportive. I think parents finding ways to get involved. So for example, at our school, I think the term PTA and what PTA has come to mean over the years makes a lot of people feel as though they don't have an opportunity to actually engage. And so at our school, we were intentional about renaming it, and we call it the Parent Alliance Committees and Task Force. And because those are 3 different layers and levels that a parent can have an opportunity to get involved, right? So if you're a part of the Parent Alliance, anyone who has had faith in us enough to bring their child to our school is automatically at the alliance level, right? And you could push the alliance level even more by thinking about the physical amount of hours that you might spend in the building. So that might be stopping by for lunch one day. And I know a lot of schools don't necessarily have an open door policy, but in the spaces that you are allowed to show up, just showing up in those spaces, learning the school lingo, right? You have a lot of schools that have their online their Canvas or whatnot, that their learning management system, when you know the name of the learning management system and you're using the school's lingo with your child feels more it makes them feel like you're more connected to the environment, and that actually automatically takes another load off of the teachers, right? So it doesn't always have to be some big grand gesture. So you have that alliance level, and you have people who there might be something that's going on and they want to be on a short task force, right? They want to get involved for this particular thing. You could get involved for that thing, raising money for one specific event. Or, you have the traditional PTA type of level where someone is involved with the committee and long-term level. But I say all of that to say is parent involvement is absolutely key. It cannot be undersold. And I think that's part of the reason why we're so successful, is because it's almost forced into the environment in essence, because the nature of how our school started was primarily homeschool curriculum. And so it's already that it's in your home type of energy. And so our parents have been very involved, and that's what really helps, because I think about truthfully, education is primarily the responsibility of the parents. The role of the teacher is just to assist the parents, right?
And I think most parents look at it as, I drop my kids off to school. This is your job now,
right?
It's your job to educate my child. And I do agree. I think parents need to play an active role in that educational process, for sure.
My final question is, we always have this discussion because now that there are so many ways to make money without going to college, social media, influencing, vlogging, how important do you think education still is in terms of, because most people, you go to school, you get an education, you find a job. But if you're finding a job without the college and all of that, do you think it's still necessary?
I think education and learning is still necessary. Do I think that the conventional expectations of what education looks like? No. And that might be challenging for some people to think, but I truly believe that if you are investing in learning, that's going to look different. So I'm big on the future of work. If anybody want to take the time to Google my dissertation. So young people, so this generation, they're going to have 4 to 5 different careers over the course of their lifetime, not just jobs. And so imagine if you invest in hundreds of thousands of dollars into a specific career, and then you just have to shift to another career, right? And so education and what it looks like is actually evolving around us. It's a matter of us evolving, choosing those things that are evolving with us as far as education is concerned. So I do not necessarily, that's why I think it's vocational school and junior colleges and stuff like that are so helpful to leverage this experience of me investing in a place and also still having that room to navigate to a different direction. But certifications, there are a ton of people in a lot of fields that are getting paid a lot more from certifications than those who have degrees. And so I'm not going to say that learning stops. Those individuals that are under the impression that, oh, well, I'm a YouTuber, I just don't need to learn. We gonna see how long you're gonna have whatever you've accrued. But I think that learning is still very important. Education itself is very important, but not necessarily the way that we expect it to look.
Yeah, I can remember, my dad was like, yo, you're going to college. I didn't have a choice. Right. And, I could see the reasons why he was gung-ho on saying, you have to go to school. Even with getting my master's, that was something that he didn't force me to do, but was really adamant that, I think you should get a master's degree. And I appreciate that, but I think, me and Sharice have this conversation a lot, and it's if our kids come and be they don't, they have this idea that they want to pursue, and but it, college is going to interfere with that. we have to entertain it.
Exactly.
Right? It's not going to be like, nah, you can't do this. You're going off to school. Like, nah, I want to, like, you know, like your mother was doing, allowing you to build a submarine at 6.
Right.
You're not really saying no, like this is a crazy idea, but you know, just kind of harnessing that creativity that you had, and look how it turned out.
I agree. Actually, my dad has a business, and I had an idea in the middle of college about something that I felt would have taken off for their business, and here it is 20 years later it came out. Wow. And I'm just like, sir, in the middle of college I actually pitched to you. I had a slide deck because I had to prepare it for a marketing class in school, and he was not hearing it. I had another business idea and it was not hearing it, and I was just like, I felt like, yes, part of my entrepreneurial experience was killed through college, but I do appreciate that I went, right? Some people absolutely need it, and it's actually a matter of, you could always go back.
And I think it's important to speak to that too, though, because like what you know, like we're saying, like everyone learns differently. It's like some people need like a college environment and a college structure to learn and to educate themselves. But we're, you know, I think the thing that we're saying is like that just doesn't work for everyone.
Not for every single person.
Yeah. So I think there's
like
a difference.
If it's something viable that your child is coming with, like give them the space, and also the opportunity for timelines for gap years. Because the thing is, you spoke earlier, Reese, about like colonization and whatnot. I realized that when I went to boarding school, a lot of people who have amassed lots of wealth, their children take gap years. And they have them planned. You know what I mean? And here we are being like hyper invested in something that is antiquated. Like being intentional about a gap year could go so much further. Now, I'm not just saying let them sit home and play video games or whatnot, but having like a plan that might not look traditional, as long as there's some type of plan and structure, I'm sure that they'll be successful.
I think one of the Obama girls took a gap year and she did like internship at like a film studio.
Exactly. And that's exactly what she's doing career-wise now, right?
Like you mentioned that when you spoke about having the kids or like the vision of like how the educational system could be in the Bahamas, where like they aren't just like in a classroom learning, like you give them opportunities to do different things to enhance their personal development, professional development, like all these things that they would need that they wouldn't get in a traditional like educational school. You know, so I think that's important.
One more input, and I also think it's good that kids have options to try different things, because how are you going to know what you want to do unless you try? But because if you just go to college and you force something upon a child, then 4 years later, I really want to do that, then you set them back. You know,
you and I had a conversation about this recently, because there was this, I think I think she was studying law, or a doctor or something, and she, you know, she was like, I'm done with this law degree, studying law. Like, I'm about to go be an influencer. And is making buku dollars now as an influencer. So, you know, it's things like that, right? Like you have kids who pursue these careers because it's what their parents want them to do, but deep down inside, like it's not who they are. And it's at a later point in life when they're like, okay, you know, forget this career, I'm going to take this chance on what I really, really want to do. And more times than not, like they're successful in it because it's really who they are. Yeah. So I think we got to know who our kids are. And you know, honestly, I think the disclaimer here is like, everyone is in a different situation, right? Like some families can afford to do, others can't. But do your best to really understand like who your kids are and what your kids need to be successful. Successful in their personal lives, successful with their education. And then when that transfers into their professional life, they could attain success in that as well.
And then to the children, have a foundation. Like, I think for me, like a foundation of faith was very helpful, because while my dad was like insistent about me going to McGill, and he was right about that, he was wrong. He was mad that I started a school. He was like, you know, I started a school in my mommy living room. He was like, this what you do? He literally said to me, this what you doing with a McGill degree? Like, he was livid. And then but because I was very clear about like how I wanted to impact people's lives, I had confidence that this was the right thing. It didn't look like the right thing to other people. A lot of people was just like, April, I have a school. But because I really had faith that like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, I was able to see it through. And now he's like super proud, right? So I think like to young people as well, like if you invest that time in yourself to really like discover who you are and like where your passions are and the things that you know beyond a shadow of doubt that you can do well in, and think of it from a perspective of like impact, like from that perspective of like the world needs you. And once you anchor in that, like times might be tough, but it's gonna work out in the end.
No, absolutely. So April, we have a parting question that I ask every guest, And this question is, I expect it to be different from guest to guest. And, that question that I'd like you to answer is, how do you define success?
I see success as truly in discovering and embracing who you are, to the point that you're able to ignite the power and potential in yourself and in others, so that you can live a purposeful life. So, I'm really big on, discovering yourself for real.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's important. Thank you for that, April. I think this was a great conversation. Let's let everyone know how to get in contact with you. So you have the Leadership Academy. You have
the Monroe Institute
of Leadership. Absolutely. That's by the way, that's coming on stream in January 2024. Super excited. We're going to be launching our first two training programs, our first two curriculums. Been working like super hard, super long on that, and I'm just happy that we're at this point. I appreciate you coming on board, assisting me with that.
It's my pleasure.
But if you want to leave some contact information,
sure. I'm so old school. It's just like, there's the wvleadership.com. So www.wvleadership.com. That's where you can find the Leadership Academy. And then via the Monroe Global website, where if you choose the MIL, which is Monroe Institute of Leadership tab, and then that's also where you can find information on the Institute in terms of social media and all that kind of stuff. I'm still pretty old school. So, I'll do better about that in 2024 though. That's like a real goal. I'm like, April, stop hiding. I'm actually like,
Yeah, I got you. Well, April, thank you. Thank you so much, man.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So this is, yes. Thank you for being here. So this is the portion of the show where I leave a milestone with you. Again, these are just principles, quotes, things that I want to leave with you to take home and apply to your daily lives. Today's milestone is simple, and it's along the topic that we've been discussing today about education, right? And it says, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And that's a quote by Albert Einstein. And I think, if we were discussing earlier that, learning never stops, right? Exactly. Education never stops. So I think if we approach life with always wanting to be informed, always wanting to be educated, then that learning will never stop. Like, we'll never stop learning. We're always going to be eager to gain information, gain an understanding of that information, and then be able to apply that to things that we're doing. And that's where wisdom comes in. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's the milestone for today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Finlayson. Thank you for being on this pod with me today. I really appreciate it. I feel like there was a great conversation. And I know you guys enjoyed it. So if you want to tap in with April, you've heard the contact information. If you want to tap in with the Monroe Institute of Leadership, we'll be launching in January 2024. I'm looking forward to that. All right. So as always, the goal and vision for this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right? Until next time, you guys be blessed.